If you get in a fight with your hypothalamus, which drives hunger, you're going to lose because it's there to make damn sure you don't starve. And so I'm never hungry. I can read faster and more efficiently than I could when I was in my 20s. Throughout the day, I'm also much more stress tolerant and able to bounce back from stressors faster. That I'm stronger and I have more stamina than I did 10 years ago. So, as you may or may not know, my daughter was very ill with a plethora of immunological problems, including very serious juvenile arthritis. It just about killed her. It did destroy 2 of her joints, and she had another 38 that were affected, and so she was always in a lot of pain. And I looked into the role that diet played in arthritis through the scientific literature for a couple of years and found if people who were arthritic fasted completely, then their arthritic symptoms often disappeared. But then my daughter started to play, and my wife as well, very intensely with the diet. We went to a nutritionist who recommended an elimination diet at one point because we did notice that she would react to strawberries and oranges. And within a day, her thumbs would swell or her toes would swell. And so we knew there was something she was eating. We had her tested for immunological reaction to food, but when we tested her, she showed a hyperreaction to virtually everything they tested her for.
I started looking into diet for other reasons, not the depression. I thought the depression was here forever.
And so she started to experiment with more restricted diets and eventually settled on beef. And it turns out for her, it has to be beef that isn't aged. Then all of her immunological symptoms disappeared. And then my wife and I started playing with that diet. And so I've only been eating beef fundamentally, for almost 5 years now. That this is, first of all, radically effective as a weight loss strategy and also seems to produce remarkable effects on the general disease symptom front. Back in November of 2021, there was a study published by a Harvard group, which wasn't a perfect study because it was retrospective self-report. They assessed 2,500 people who had been on a carnivore diet for 6 months. These people were so shocked by what they found.
69% improved chronic disease. 95% of them reported that they improved their overall health. 85% saw better mental clarity. The percentages go on. I mean, look at all of these percentages. All they did is eat meat, including fish. They also were able to eat eggs. They were able to eat dairy, drinking bone broth. You could have salt, you could have condiments, you can have spices, but there were no fruits, no vegetables, no grains.
Because I never imagined in my wildest dreams, number one, that you could just live on meat, number two, that it would have such a salutary effect. So for me, I lost 52 pounds in 7 months. I went from 212 pounds to 165, which is exactly what I weighed when I was 23. And I've maintained that weight since. I can put on muscle mass with no problem, even though I'm 62. I had a host of inflammatory conditions, some of which were quite serious, including peripheral uveitis, which sometimes blinds people, in my right eye, and it disappeared completely, along with psoriasis and gastric reflux disorder, and interestingly enough, gum disease, which is technically incurable, which is linked to cardiovascular degeneration, and which has gone away 100% in my case, according to multiple measures that my dentists have taken. But I'll tell you, it's something to be 60 and to have the same essential body morphology that I had when I was 23. And that had all disappeared from me in my early 50s. And I eat a lot of meat and a lot of high-fat meat, and so I'm never hungry. I never get hungry, and I eat high-fat carnivore snacks too. What I found is as long as I'm never hungry, then I'm not inclined to cheat. But if I do try something like an introduction of carbohydrates, first of all, some of my symptoms come back right away, like the GERDs, and I start craving like mad. It is the case that I do better if I just stick to beef. Now, could I have pork and chicken? I had a very terrible bout of ill health, and I'm disinclined to do a lot of experimentation, although I'll probably try again in the future sometime. But I do know that beef works. We've been hypothesizing internally in our family, for what it's worth, is that the reason that beef works and that other ruminant animals, bison, so forth, lamb, goat, is because they they process what they eat through so many stomachs that by the time it is actually turned into meat, there's pretty much nothing else there. So it's a very purified form of nutritional, a very purified form of food. Now, like I said, that's anecdotal, and this is partly why I don't talk about it, but I can tell you, after you've talked to 1,000 people who tell you the same anecdote, you don't have an anecdote anymore, you have a hypothesis. And it's really quite something seeing these people who show me pictures of what they looked like a year ago, and they were carrying around an extra person with them, and they're still shell-shocked by the transformation, because it's really something to lose, say, 150 pounds in a year. The diet has actually been rejuvenating for my wife and I. Like, its effect on muscle tone has to be seen to be believed. And that's true even though both of us are 60. Like, my wife is in better shape from a musculature perspective now at 63 than she was when she was 40. And she was a very physically fit person who was exercising constantly and who was in pretty damn good shape. And to see that reverse rather than just, stop deteriorating, I don't really know what to make of it. Well, the advantage too of the diet, the carnivore diet in particular, is because you can eat as much as you want. It's actually not a diet. The problem with diets is that they require privation, and they require almost continual privation, and then they also tend to produce a yo-yo effect. And that's partly because if you get in a fight with your hypothalamus, which drives hunger, you're going to lose because it's there to make damn sure you don't starve. Now, if I ever start to crave a banana split, for example, I can just eat another 5 or 6 ounces of steak, and then I don't care. If I go into a grocery store after having consumed enough meat, then the provision of this infinite display of delicious foods really doesn't affect me much. But boy, if I ever go into a grocery store when I'm hungry, that's quite the pain in the neck, because everything's delightful and tempting. My ability to concentrate when I was reading was deteriorating. And that instead of reading as deeply as I was sort of glancing at the words. And when I started this carnivore diet, that reversed. And I can now, I actually think this is true. I think I can read faster and more efficiently than I could when I was in my 20s. Throughout the day, I'm also much more stress tolerant and able to bounce back from stressors faster. That I'm stronger and I have more stamina than I did 10 years ago.